We all need energy to power our homes and businesses, certainly. PNM, the state's largest utility, recently requested an increase in residential rates and new fees for solar customers. Now, the PRC rejected the rate hike request this month. And in a separate case, PNM is seeking approval from the Public Regulation Commission on a plan to shut down 2 of 4 units at the San Juan Generating Station. That's a coal-fired power plant in northwestern New Mexico. Opponents to both plans want PNM to add more renewable resources like solar to its portfolio. But PNM says solar technology isn't ready to meet current energy demands. So, where do we go from here? Our producer Sarah Gustava sat down with both sides to discuss the future cost of energy here in New Mexico.
I'm joined at the table today by Vicente Garcia, Director of Juntos New Mexico, Julian Singer-Corbin, spokesperson for Positive Energy Solar, and Ryan Baca, spokesperson for PNM. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
I want to focus on the cost of energy. Ryan, PNM recently sought a rate increase for residential customers in New Mexico. Why does PNM feel like they need that rate increase right now?
Well, we've made investments of over $585 million into the infrastructure and the system that brings power into your home. Things like new solar centers, new gas peaking plants, upgrades to the distribution system that actually transmits that power. And that's where almost all of that rate increase request is coming from. It's going to pay for those types of things.
We hear some folks saying, though, in the community and looking at this issue that they want more to go to solar and renewables, that they feel like not enough in the PNM plan for the future is going to that. What's PNM's response?
We absolutely understand where folks are coming from and that they want some more solar and some more renewable energy. The thing that we have to make sure that we're focused on and that we're balanced is that the base load generation that we use to serve our customers is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there's not a whole lot of room in there to allow for energy that's not available at night, that's not available when the wind isn't blowing. And at this particular point, there's not a whole lot of technologies that can replace other forms of energy that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But our plan replaces some of the coal-fired energy with carbon-free energy and some solar.
Vicente, you work with Latino families in New Mexico. You're an organizing group. What are you hearing from people right now?
Yeah, we work with Latino families. We're an organizing group, and the biggest thing that we're organizing around actually right now is the replacement plan and is the rate hike. And I think that we're hearing across the board, just like you mentioned, people want to see more renewables. And I think specifically for this case, we're seeing that there is a shutdown of 2 stacks within the San Juan Generating Station. So it's good, and I think we want to applaud PNM for their efforts. And I think a lot of times, it gets pitted in like environment against the jobs or environment against the economy. And I don't think we're for that. We want to fight for renewables because we also know it's economical. There's amazing advances to allow that now, to allow for storage so that things like wind and solar can still be viable, to be able to calculate wind patterns and sun patterns, to be able to match the needs. So I think people know that, I think people understand that, and we want to push for that as much as possible.
Now, the PRC delayed a decision on the San Juan Generating Station plan. It rejected the request for the rate hike. Is PNM going to file again?
I don't know that we have announced or made specific decisions as to what our next step is. We're still evaluating that. And I'm really excited to hear what Vicente said around that balancing thing, because that's what PNM does constantly, is we've got to balance the renewable energy and things like that. You mentioned some of the technology around battery storage. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but did you know that PNM has the very first grid-tied battery storage project in the country? And so we're on the forefront of research and development around battery storage technology and looking at what applications that has and continuing to work with labs and universities to continue to study that. That's really exciting stuff. Unfortunately, today, it's not viable on a large scale, and it's not economically friendly on a large scale. But we continue to be part of that discussion and research and look at what applications that has in the future. We've got people from all over the world and all over the country coming here to learn how we've successfully integrated that battery storage project, and it's very exciting stuff.
Julian, how does this conversation about the rate case and also the San Juan Generating Station impact the conversations you're having with customers or potential customers for Positive Energy Solar?
You know, I encounter a lot of frustration, and that's a lot of people are very frustrated because they don't understand why their power needs to become more expensive right now and in such a big way. This is a large request for a rate hike, and also the idea of charging someone an extra fee to be connected with their photovoltaic or their solar electric array. Seems like a step backwards in our acceptance of these new technologies. I can echo what Vicente said to Ryan. We really appreciate PNM's investment in renewable technologies, and you have taken steps that are really important for us. It's nowhere near enough. We need to take a much bigger, much larger leap here. We've kind of got our toes in the water, and it's a little cold and we're feeling it out. There's another school of thought where we jump in here and we take advantage of the fact that New Mexico is a resource-rich place. We have the second highest solar resource in the country. A lot of people know that. A lot of people talk with me about it. I don't understand why PNM isn't doing more solar. That's what they tell me. PNM is doing solar, but it's not a large enough percentage. And what they are doing, they're mandated to do by their renewable portfolio standard. This is something that PNM's been told they have to do, and so they're working hard to barely comply with the standards that are being put out there. We would like to see a larger step taken to jump in front of that, and I think a lot of New Mexicans, 8 out of 10 that I talk to in their homes at their kitchen tables, feel the same way.
Ryan, response to that?
Well, I think that you're absolutely right as far as we are meeting the standards that have been put forth for us. And there are mechanisms to push PNM to do even more. And our PNM Sky Blue program is a great option for our customers who want to see even more. I hope that both of you are signed up, or if you're not signed up after today and all of the time that we've spent together, that you'll sign up for the PNM Sky Blue program, because that's something that's really obviously very important to you. And that'll push PNM to do more.
What does that program do?
The PNM Sky Blue program is a way to offset your energy that you use inside your own home with renewable sources. And so that program will push PNM to do above and beyond what's required by the state. And as folks sign up for that and that subscription levels are filled, then we have to build even more and we have to do even more. By the end of this year, PNM will have 15 solar centers and 1 million solar panels, and that represents an investment of $270 million into just solar. We also have 2 wind plants that we purchase all of the energy from. But we hear our customers. We hear that they want more. We also serve, like Vicente was talking about, low-income families. We serve families that can't afford or are very concerned about not only this rate increase, but future potential rate increases. And so we also have people that are concerned about the economy and the jobs and reliability. And so what PNM has to do constantly is balance all of those things. So when we are working towards integrating more solar and integrating more renewable energy, we've got to do it in a way that makes sense for New Mexico.
So Vicente, if families can't vote with their dollars for renewable energy, how can they be part of the conversation?
Oh, absolutely, and that's what we work to do every day. We do community organizing in the Latino community, which means we're at community events, we're at festivals, we do door-to-door, and people can get involved, and that's the exact ask that we do. We do ask them, and we work with people to help them understand where their energy comes from, how they can be engaged, how they can go to their Public Regulation Commission and make a difference. So there's a variety of ways that people can join the conversation, and we encourage them to.
Can they pay higher rates if it's coming from solar or other renewable sources?
I think that's going to be a real struggle for a lot of families. As we know, New Mexico is one of the poorest states in the country. Now we have a lot of other positive resources, but we do have a problem with poverty. So I think that any increase in electricity does impact people. And I think that people say a lot of times is, okay, well, if we're going to go to renewable energy, that's going to be more costly. And I think we're seeing now that that's actually not the case, especially if you look at fossil fuels such as coal and nuclear. Coal, for example, is going down in the international market. everybody is pulling out of coal. Nobody wants it. A lot of people think that PNM hasn't been able to get their coal contracts because nobody wants to go to coal anymore. So, I mean, the future is, I think, looking bright for renewables.
Julian, this is not just about PNM, it's not just about groups, it's also we need elected officials as part of this conversation as well. We don't have anyone at the table right now, but what would you like to see from leadership at the state level or even at the local level here in Albuquerque?
Well, that's a really good question. What is it that we want our elected officials to do? We'd like them to represent us and our thoughts and our beliefs as their constituents. I get to talk to a lot of people who are someone's constituents, and there's a consensus that we'd like to see a larger investment from the government level in solar. Make it a little bit easier for companies to grow and create jobs, which Ryan spoke to, which I think is very important. Positive Energy has created a lot of jobs, including mine. Over the last couple of years, we've grown significantly, so now we're the #1 solar installer in the state. There's a lot of room for us to grow. There's a lot of room for new renewable companies, and so we want to see those businesses be able to get a nice start. We want to see businesses come to New Mexico, but we'd also like to see policies around homeowners purchasing solar. Recently, the extension for the state level tax credit was just left on a desk after it was passed by the state level House of Representatives. The governor didn't want to sign that into law to extend the tax credit to help low income families and any income family be able to afford solar power, clean renewable energy. So I'd like to see, I'd like to hear an answer for why that happened. But I'd also like to see a really open discussion using facts about how it is that we can make New Mexico prosper and thrive into the future by affecting our policy to be more renewable friendly.
Ryan, is there anything that the government leadership can do to support that? If New Mexicans say they want more solar, they want more renewable, can the government have a role in that?
Well, you know, we abide by several regulations, not only at the PRC level, but we also have the State Energy Efficient Use of Energy Act, and the Renewable Portfolio Standards. So there are certainly ways that elected officials can weigh in. Our energy efficiency programs, we talked about low-income groups. Our energy efficiency programs can not only wipe out the rate increase for customers, but even then some. And we have some phenomenal programs that go to support low-income groups and all of our customers in teaching them to save energy, in teaching them to reduce their bill and show them. The really great thing about electricity is that we as consumers are always in control of our bill. We are in control of what we use constantly. I'm a solar PV customer myself. I've got 20 solar panels on my home, and I'm in control of what I flip on. Not like our maybe cell phone or our television service where you pay whether you watch television or not. For me, for electricity, you pay for what you use. So we are all in control.
We do hear from folks, though, concerned that we've been encouraged to reduce our use, but then there's a request for a rate hike anyway. Also, in addition to PNM, El Paso Electric is expected to ask for a rate hike for customers in southern New Mexico. So that seems like that's a challenging thing for people.
Well, I understand that is certainly a strange issue, but there are costs associated with making sure that you have electricity whenever you want it. There's costs associated that whether you use a lot of electricity or not very much electricity or at all, or like me, a solar PV customer, there are still costs associated with serving me because I use the grid at night and I use the grid when my solar panels are covered with snow. It doesn't happen very often, but so there are grid maintenance and grid related costs that don't change with the amount that you use. So yes, there is an increase in that realm, but we are also investing millions, $26 million in helping our customers use less of our product and show them how they can be in control of their own bill. We've got so many different programs for everybody.
Very briefly, one thing you're going to be looking for next when we look at the cost of energy in New Mexico?
I think we want to be looking at really the true cost of coal and nuclear, because I think what we're seeing is that the big reason why a lot of these rate hikes are happening is because PNM is taking on all these really risky investments for coal, there's a huge amount of money that goes into that. I mean, we're talking about, just if you're thinking about it visually, a large coal plant, a large nuclear plant. There's lots of money that goes into maintaining that and to paying the regulatory costs. And so I think for us, we feel like a lot of the reason why rates are going up is because PNM is continuing to invest in those resources and not transitioning quickly enough to renewables in order to keep costs down.
Transitioning quickly actually would increase costs even more. And the reason that PNM is asking for a rate increase doesn't have anything to do with those things that you mentioned. If you think about in your home, if you just threw out everything that you had and replaced it all brand new, which is what you're talking about when you're asking us to transition even quicker than we are, it would be more expensive than if we did that in a steady manner and replace the things that needed to be replaced in a steady manner and one that made sense and was stable.
I think stability is important, but I think so is just coming to grips with reality. This change is going to happen anyway, and so what's the alternative? We all pay $10 more a month on our bill now to do this small change and then have another giant infrastructure change once coal and this style of producing energy has entered obsolescence and we're continuing to have New Mexico be at the back of this train? Or are we going to have the foresight to look at this investment not as we're buying all new appliances or we're just paying a little bit more for electricity? Maybe we're buying new appliances so that over the next 50 years there is a lower cost and we have a much better chance to thrive and prosper in our environment because we had a little more foresight.
And PNM and what you're talking about, we all agree. We're all working towards the same thing. We might disagree on how quickly to get there or how exactly to get there, but we're all working towards the same ultimate goal, absolutely. You mentioned a few of us could just pay a little bit, $10 more a month. $10, actually $9.75 more a month is what we're asking for. And Vicente's talking about how that's not feasible and how they're very concerned about that. So it's good that we're having this dialogue and this conversation because these are the types of issues that PNM constantly has to balance.
And we certainly will return to this subject again. Thank you so much for being here today. Anyone can share their comments and their thoughts with us at newmexicoinfocus.org.